I used to believe betrayal would be loud, screaming, slamming doors. Instead, it was quiet enough to steal my breath. My mother stood in a packed courtroom crying softly as she said, "We gave you every opportunity and you threw it away." My father didn't defend me. He just nodded. My brother stared straight ahead, already counting my losses. My lawyer stayed calm. Too calm. Then the judge stopped reading. He looked up slowly and said he'd seen my company mentioned in the news last week. Before I explain how it reached that point, hit like comment city and share if family ever crossed you. I didn't grow up in a broken home. That's the part that still confuses people when I tell this story. From the outside, my family looked polished, comfortable, the kind of family neighbors pointed to and said, "They've got it figured out." My father ran a long-established financial business in Boston. He loved structure, legacy, and predictability. My mother loved appearances. Perfect dinners, perfect smiles, perfect timing for tears. And then there was Marcus, my older brother. The heir. The one everyone expected to step into my father's world without ever questioning whether he wanted to or deserved to. I was the other one, not the rebel in a dramatic way. I didn't scream or slam doors, I just didn't fit. While Marcus talked about portfolios and networking dinners, I was fascinated by systems, by how things broke, how they could be protected, how unseen threats worked. I once tried to explain my ideas over dinner sketching on a napkin while the roast cooled. My father watched for a minute, then smiled like you do at a child pretending to run a business with play money. "That's a phase," he said. "You'll grow out of it." My mother laughed lightly and changed the subject. Those moments piled up. Holidays where Marcus was praised for things he hadn't even finished yet. Conversations that stopped when I walked into the room. Compliments that always came with conditions. "You're smart, but you're talented if only you'd..." When I left to build my own life, it wasn't dramatic. No final argument, no ultimatums, just distance. I married James, took his last name, built something quietly, intentionally, without announcing it to anyone who once told me I'd fail. And it worked. Not overnight, not easily. There were years when my entire world fit inside a cramped apartment and a laptop balanced on a folding table. Long nights, missed events, cold coffee. I learned to survive on focus and stubbornness. I learned how to keep going without applause. What I didn't do was tell my family. I didn't correct their assumptions. When Marcus joked that I was still figuring things out, I let him. When my mother asked too sweetly if I was okay financially, I said I was fine and left it there. It felt safer that way. Like keeping a door closed in a house where you know a storm is coming. For years, silence protected me. I didn't realize it was also buying them time to decide what they thought I deserved. And by the time they noticed I'd built something real, something valuable, they weren't impressed. They were threatened. Success didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived quietly in small confirmations I didn't announce to anyone. A contract renewed without negotiation. A client who stopped asking if and started asking how soon. New faces joining the team, people who trusted me with their livelihoods. I learned early that the less my family knew, the calmer my life stayed. So I kept my name off headlines. I avoided posting anything that hinted at scale or momentum. When my mother asked vague questions about what I did these days, I kept my answers just as vague. Technology, consulting, busy. Nothing impressive enough to invite scrutiny. For a while, it worked. Then, Marcus started calling. Not directly at first. Little messages slipped into group chats, comments during holidays. Heard tech's volatile right now. Must be stressful not having stability. Always said with a smile, always framed as concern. My father started asking questions too, not about me, about risk, about liability, about whether people like me understood consequences. I felt the shift before I understood it. The attention sharpened. My mother suddenly wanted updates. She asked if I'd considered coming back more often, reconnecting, maybe even talking to my father about opportunities. The word opportunities sat wrong in my stomach. It wasn't an invitation, it was an assessment. Then there was the dinner. Nothing dramatic happened, no argument. Just an offhand comment from Marcus about hearing that I'd finally landed something decent. He said it like a joke, but his eyes didn't laugh. They searched my face, waiting for confirmation, waiting to measure how much I'd grown without him noticing. I changed the subject. That night, I told James something didn't feel right. He didn't argue. He'd seen this pattern before, not the details, but the shape of it. The way curiosity turns into entitlement when certain people realize you might have something they didn't approve of earning. 2 weeks later, the envelope arrived, thick, official, my name printed too cleanly on the front. I remember standing in the hallway, keys still in my hand, staring at it like it might move if I looked away. When I opened it, the words didn't register all at once. Bankruptcy, petition, creditor, amount owed rounded, confident, precise. Marcus's name sat there like it belonged. I read it twice, 3 times. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. What I felt was colder than fear. They weren't asking questions anymore. They had made a decision, and they were about to force me to answer it in court. I didn't cry when I finished reading the filing. I sat down at the kitchen table and read it again, slower this time. Every line, every number, every confident lie wrapped in legal language. They claimed my company owed Marcus nearly $2 million, payments I had defaulted on, bills I had ignored, agreements I had supposedly signed years ago. The tone wasn't angry or emotional. That was the part that scared me. It was calm, methodical, written to sound inevitable. This wasn't a threat. It was an execution plan. I called my lawyer and told her exactly what was in front of me. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a pause on the line, just long enough for me to brace myself. "They're trying to force a bankruptcy process," she said finally. "Not because it will hold up, but because it creates noise, delays, doubt." "So they know it's fake," I said. "Yes, and they're counting on you reacting emotionally instead of strategically." That's when the weight of it landed. This wasn't Marcus acting alone in a moment of jealousy. This took coordination, time, approval. Someone had to decide this was acceptable. Someone had to nod and say, "Go ahead." I thought of my mother's careful silences, my father's belief that discipline always looked like punishment, the way they closed ranks when something threatened the story they'd built about themselves. I didn't ask if they were involved. I already knew. The next few days blurred together. I pulled records, audits, bank statements. Every clean trail I'd spent years maintaining suddenly mattered more than ever. My lawyer asked for everything: payments, bills, correspondence, without rushing me. She wasn't worried. That steadiness became my anchor. "This only works if we let it," she said. "Truth has a way of surviving pressure." I didn't reach out to my family, not to confront them, not to warn them. Silence was no longer protection, it was strategy. If they wanted to paint me as reckless, I would show up controlled. If they wanted chaos, I would give them precision. At night, when the house was quiet, the anger tried to surface. Not the explosive kind, the kind that asks dangerous questions. How could they? Why wasn't I enough? I didn't let it take over. Because this wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about making sure their lies collapsed under their own weight. And the courtroom was where that collapse would begin. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of cold that settles in your chest when every sound feels too loud and every movement feels watched. I arrived early, not to make a statement, just to breathe before everything collided. My lawyer sat beside me, already organized, already prepared, neat stacks of documents, payments, bills, audited records, calm, in human form. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She didn't need to. She knew this kind of silence. Then my family walked in. They didn't come together. They never did when things mattered. My mother entered first, dressed in black, like she was attending a funeral. Marcus followed, confident, relaxed, already shaking hands with his attorney. My father came last, posture straight, eyes forward, refusing to look in my direction. No one acknowledged me. That hurt more than I expected, not because I wanted comfort, but because it confirmed something final. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was alignment. When the hearing began, Marcus's attorney spoke first. His voice was smooth, practiced. He described my company as unstable, overextended, poorly managed. He spoke about debts and obligations, about my pattern of avoidance, about the need to protect creditors. My mother started crying on cue. Soft at first, just enough to be noticed. She dabbed her eyes, shook her head slowly, like this was all breaking her heart. When she spoke, her voice cracked perfectly. We gave her every opportunity, she said, and she threw it all away. I felt something tighten in my throat, not because the words surprised me, because she said them like they were a fact everyone already agreed on. My father nodded beside her, just once, small, controlled. That nod landed harder than her words. Marcus didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, hands folded already, imagining how this would end. In his version of reality, this courtroom was the final proof he'd been right all along. My lawyer didn't react. She didn't object, didn't interrupt. She waited. The judge reviewed the documents in silence, page after page. The room held its breath. I could hear the soft hum of the lights overhead, the scrape of a chair somewhere behind me. Then, something shifted. The judge stopped turning pages. He removed his glasses and set them down carefully. Too carefully. He leaned back slightly and looked up, not at the lawyers, not at the papers. At me. The silence stretched. My pulse hammered in my ears. "I need counsel to approach the bench," he said. Both attorneys stood. Marcus's lawyer walked confidently at first. Halfway there, I saw his shoulders stiffen. My lawyer moved at the same pace she always did, unhurried, composed. They spoke in low voices. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the color drain from Marcus's lawyer's face. His jaw tightened. He nodded too quickly. When they returned to their seats, the judge didn't put his glasses back on. "I have a question," he said, voice steady, carrying across the room. "About the company at the center of this petition." Marcus finally looked up. "I read about this company last week," the judge continued. "Not in a filing. In a publication." My mother's crying stopped mid-breath. Marcus's eyes flicked toward his lawyer. "A technology firm," the judge said slowly, growing rapidly, providing services at a level that caught national attention. He paused. "Does that sound familiar to you, Mr. Whitmore?" Marcus stood. "Your Honor, with respect, the defendant is exaggerating her success. This is a small operation I haven't finished," the judge said, cutting him off cleanly. The room felt different now. Charged? Alert? "I'm looking at audited financial records." The judge continued, lifting a page. "They show consistent revenue growth, significant reserves, no indication of insolvency." He turned another page. "I'm also looking at payment records that do not align with the obligations claimed in this petition." Marcus's lawyer shifted in his seat. "And then there's this," the judge said, holding up another document. "Signature analysis, independent, detailed." He looked directly at Marcus. "These signatures do not match the defendant's handwriting." The air went thin. My father leaned forward slightly, like he was trying to hear something better. My mother's hand froze in her lap. My lawyer stood. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "we are prepared to walk the court through each inconsistency. The payments referenced here do not exist. The bills cited were never issued. The alleged loan occurred during a period when the petitioner's own financial records show instability. She let that land. Furthermore, interfering with an active company through fraudulent filings carries serious implications." Marcus shot to his feet. "This is ridiculous. She's twisting facts to protect herself." The judge's gaze didn't move. "What concerns me," he said, "is not her defense. It's your certainty." He turned a page, then another. "Someone in this courtroom," he said slowly, "is lying to my face." My chest loosened. "Just a fraction." The judge continued. "And based on what I'm seeing, it is not the defendant." My mother's eyes darted to my father. He didn't look back. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. "I am dismissing this petition," the judge said, "with prejudice." He paused, then added, "This matter will also be referred for further review." My lawyer placed a hand lightly on the table. "Not on me." She didn't need to. This was already done. Court officers approached Marcus and his attorney. Quiet words, serious expressions. My family suddenly looked smaller, folded in on themselves. As we stood to leave, my mother reached for my arm. "Alexis," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. We were trying to help. I looked at her hand, then at her face. No, I said quietly. You were trying to be right. I turned away before she could respond. Behind me, I heard my father say my name. I didn't stop. The courtroom doors closed with a sound that felt final, and for the first time since this began, I wasn't bracing myself for impact anymore. I was walking away from it. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It never does. It moved quietly the way consequences usually move when there's no one left to shield them. Marcus stopped calling first. Then his lawyer did. I didn't hear details directly, only what filtered through the edges of conversations I wasn't part of anymore. Reviews, questions, things being looked into. The kind of language people use when certainty has abandoned them. My parents tried a different approach. A voicemail from my mother, soft and careful, explaining how no one meant for things to go this far. A message from my father that sounded more like a closing statement than an apology. He talked about family, about reputation, about how mistakes shouldn't define someone forever. I didn't respond, not out of spite, out of clarity. What they'd done wasn't a mistake, it was a choice, and choices don't dissolve just because the outcome is uncomfortable. Work moved forward. Meetings resumed, deadlines mattered again. My team showed up the way they always had, focused, steady, trusting me without asking for explanations. That trust grounded me more than any verdict ever could. At home, life softened, evenings were quieter. The constant tension I'd learned to live with finally released its grip. I slept better, thought clearer. For the first time in a long while, my success didn't feel like something I had to defend. I didn't win by watching them fall. I won by standing still while the truth did what it always does. It held. I learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Family isn't defined by who shares your last name. It's defined by who stands beside you when the truth gets uncomfortable. Some people only love you when you're small enough to control. When you outgrow that role, they call it betrayal. If this story hit close to home, you're not alone. Share your thoughts in the comments, tell me where you're listening from, and if you want more real family drama stories like this, make sure you subscribe.